You know, I've worked in this sector, so I know what some of the challenges are. In particular, in my case, I worked with youth at risk of homelessness. And our biggest challenge was we never knew when our funding was going to get renewed. Short-term funding, and the funding's appreciated, and I know that, but I think it is time we started to say we'll put longer-term agreements in place, that the agreements are not just for the term of a government, that they can be renewed. So if you are approved for an 8-year project, at the 4-year point it's reviewed, but that the renewal does not have to be as onerous. I hear from a lot of people in the sector, we're spending so much time applying for money, we're not spending time doing the work we need to do. So I think we have to take a look at what is working, and we have lots of examples. If it's working, how do we ensure it stays in place and is sustainable? And that comes through long-term agreements. And when we're looking at transferring funds from the federal government, we need to cut down on the red tape, and we need to, when we're leveraging provincial monies, we have to say that this is going to be for X number of years. And people will know then that the project will stay around.
The charitable sector and the nonprofit economy is a huge portion of like how we protect the most vulnerable and how we meet some of our most important social needs. So the NDP party, like the plan is to improve quality of life, to expand services, to invest in arts and culture, to invest in fast-tracking funds to social housing and to nonprofit groups to address the housing crisis on the ground by like really going to these people that are already doing the work in our communities, that are already meeting the needs, and that are supporting people within the spaces that they already know what the issues are. So as opposed to going in and paying for another study and like replicating the work that these charitable organizations and nonprofits are already doing, we will work with them to support that work on the ground.
About 85% of the groups, associations, and people who come to see you, they're not consulting firms from big multi-million-dollar companies, but rather very important organizations, associations on the ground. For example, the firefighters of Nova Scotia or Canada, the police, the all kinds of charitable, as you said, that's helping communities, Beacon House and whatnot. These are all organizations that play such an important role in our country, and we wouldn't be, as a government, able to deliver all the services they are doing. So we have to work closely with them, and that's what we have been doing. They play an important part of the Canadian fabric, and I'm proud of that.
You know, one of the things that's really important to the Green Party is we think that our social safety net is no longer working as well as it could. We're seeing too many people fall through the cracks. So we're calling for a basic universal income. We think it is time in this country that we went beyond just looking at piecemeal social services. And I mean, there are great areas where we're doing good things, but we do need now to start looking at what it would take to implement a basic income across the board. So that's the first thing that is a broad base. It would allow people, for example, more time to volunteer. It would give people the ability to know they have funding for food and shelter. Basic income would be different in different places, but if it was in place, then people wouldn't panic. And we wouldn't have means testing. So a whole industry that is been set up to ensure that people don't break the rules and to catch them if they're somehow making a mistake with the rules, that could disappear. And I think we'd return some dignity. And I think in Atlantic Canada we would feel that significantly. We're also calling for a national pharmacare program, because another area where we think the time has come, we're the only country in the developed world that has universal single-payer Medicare that doesn't have pharmacare. So we would, and we're now seeing other parties calling for that, so I don't see why we couldn't work together and do that. So those are two major planks where I think we address the questions of the issues that poverty is causing in our country. We also need to look at, again, coming back to how are we supporting the common good? Are we putting in place ways for people to work together to grow food? Are we putting in place ways for people to have their own energy supply? I mean, the Green Party is very much in support of doing that. Co-op housing, shared garden plots, and it is time that we put some federal funding in place to allow those things to grow.
So what we're really seeing is that consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments have made life easier for the rich and harder for the rest of us. What we're going to do is improve and expand our services, address the housing crisis with 500,000 units of affordable, safe housing, expand our offerings and the way that we're shifting towards a carbon-free economy by creating 300,000 good new green jobs. We're also going to expand healthcare to include pharmacare for all, dental for families making under 70, or people in general making under $70,000 a year. So we're going to really go to the root of the inequality, to the root of these issues that are causing so much vulnerability, increases in child poverty, increases in just like the lack of ability to live well, no matter how hard you work. So we hear a lot of talk about the middle class, but what we haven't been hearing about is the working poor, the people who are living in poverty, and we're going to address those issues.
Vulnerable Canadians, that's the key word I want to take here, because that's what represents our party. We have focused right through the last 4 years on all Canadians, but we've especially tried to tighten up that gap between the low-income Canadians and the middle class. And our focus is how can we help those individuals and those organizations continue to prosper. And it is our responsibility as a government to ensure that every child, every individual has the same opportunity. And to do so, you got to help remove some of the barriers.